As usual, if you like these stories or it felt meaningful to you, feel free to like, share, and comment your thoughts below, as well as subscribe to our channel. It could be a huge support for our work. Now, let's just enjoy the stories.
His hand rests on the table between us, perfectly still. I can't look at it. I can't look away. We shouldn't do this, I whisper, and my voice cracks on the last word. He doesn't move, doesn't blink. The silence in his office stretches until I can hear my own heartbeat in my ears, until the distant sounds of the city below fade into nothing. When he finally speaks, his voice is so quiet I have to lean forward to hear him. You misunderstand, Isabel. He tilts his head, and lamplight catches the silver at his temples. This isn't something we're about to do. This is something that's already done. My breath catches. What are you? 6 months ago, he says softly. You walked into the restaurant wearing a black coat 3 sizes too big for you. You ordered coffee you couldn't afford and made a cup last 2 hours while you filled out job applications. You didn't know I owned the building. You didn't know I was sitting 12 feet away, watching you bite your pen and cross out every mistake, like you were afraid someone would see your handwriting and judge you for it. The floor tilts beneath me. That was the first time? I manage. No. His eyes, dark, unreadable, never leave mine. That was the first time I realized you'd already become mine. I'd been watching you for 3 weeks before that. Let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you how a man like Damian Knox decided I was worth noticing, worth keeping, worth owning in a way that doesn't leave room for words like consent, or choice, or escape. Let me tell you how I became the thing he couldn't let go of. The thing about being invisible is that you start to depend on it. I'd perfected the art by 24. Head down, shoulders curved inward, clothes that whispered "don't notice me" in every neutral shade I could afford from thrift stores that smelled like mothballs and other people's disappointments. I moved through the world like a ghost, and that was exactly how I needed it to be. My mother used to say I had a face people remembered. She said it like a warning. She was right to warn me. I just didn't know it yet. The law firm where I worked, if you could call it working, was the kind of place where people came to disappear into paperwork. Sanderson and Meyer, tucked between a dry cleaner and a bodega on the Lower East Side, smelling perpetually of toner and someone's reheated lunch. I was a file clerk. Minimum wage, maximum invisibility. Perfect. I'd been there 8 months when Mr. Sanderson called me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. He looked nervous. Actually nervous, which was strange because Richard Sanderson had exactly 2 emotional states: mildly irritated and asleep. Isabel, he said, not meeting my eyes, we've got a new client, important client. He's requested his files be handled with discretion. Of course, I said, because that was my job. Discretion, invisibility. His name is Damian Knox. I didn't recognize it then. I should have. Later, I would. Understand that not recognizing that name meant I'd been living in a different world entirely. A smaller world where men like Damian Knox were just rumors, just stories other people told in whispers. He's requested someone personally deliver updated contracts to his office tomorrow at noon. I'm sending you. My stomach dropped. Me? Why not? He asked for you specifically. Sanderson's hands trembled as he straightened papers that were already straight. By name. The floor felt unsteady. I've never even met. Tomorrow, noon. Don't be late. He dismissed me with a wave, and I stood there for 3 seconds too long, trying to understand how a man I'd never met knew my name. I didn't sleep that night. The Knox building stood in Midtown like a blade, all dark glass and sharp angles, the kind of architecture that made you feel small before you even walked through the door. I stood on the sidewalk across the street for 10 minutes, watching people flow in and out, every single one of them looking like they belonged to a world I'd never be part of. The file folder in my hands felt like it weighed 50 pounds. Just deliver the papers. Don't make eye contact. Don't say anything unnecessary. Get out. The lobby was marble and silence. My cheap shoes squeaked on the floor, and I wanted to die. The security guard, built like a wall, with eyes that saw everything, looked at me like he knew exactly who I was. Isabel Moretti? My name in his mouth made me flinch. Yes. Top floor. You're expected. The elevator was glass on 3 sides, and I watched the city shrink beneath me, watched myself become smaller and smaller until I was just a dark-haired girl in a borrowed blazer, clutching a folder like a shield. The doors opened onto a reception area that looked like it had been decorated by someone who thought furniture was a personal insult. Everything was sharp lines and cold surfaces, except for the woman behind the desk. 50-something, perfectly composed, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Miss Moretti, Mr. Knox is finishing a call. Please, have a seat. I sat. My palms were sweating. From somewhere beyond the heavy wooden doors behind the reception desk, I could hear a voice. Low, measured, speaking what sounded like Italian. I couldn't make out words, but I could hear the tone, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to make people listen. The call ended. Silence settled like snow. You can go in now, the receptionist said. Just hand him the folder. Don't make eye contact. Get out. I stood, walked to the door, knocked. Come in, Isabel. He knew I was there. He'd been waiting. The door felt heavy, or maybe that was just my hand shaking as I pushed it open. The office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, furniture that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years, and behind a desk that looked hand-carved from a single piece of dark wood, a man who made the room feel small, Damian Knox. He was watching me. Had been watching me, I realized, from the moment the door opened. Dark suit, perfectly tailored, dark hair, touched with silver. Dark eyes that didn't blink, didn't waver, didn't give me anywhere to hide. He was beautiful in the way sharp things are beautiful. Beautiful like broken glass, like storms on the ocean, like things that could hurt you without even trying. Mr. Knox, I managed, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone braver than me. I have the updated contracts from Sanderson and Meyer. I stepped forward, arm extended, the folder between us like a peace offering. He didn't reach for it. Set it on the desk, he said quietly. I did. Stepped back, started to turn. Stay. One word. Soft as a prayer, absolute as a command. I froze. Look at me, Isabel. Don't do it. This is how you stay invisible. This is how you stay safe. I looked at him. His eyes were darker than I'd thought. Darker and deeper. And looking into them felt like stepping off a ledge, like that moment when you realize you're falling and there's nothing left to grab onto. Do you know who I am? He asked. You're Mr. Knox. You're a client. And what else? My mouth went dry. I don't. What do people say about me, Isabel? What have you heard? Nothing. I've heard nothing because I don't listen to gossip. Don't pay attention. I've heard. I swallowed. I've heard you're someone important, someone powerful. Someone dangerous, he corrected gently. That's what they say, isn't it? I didn't answer. He stood, moved around the desk with the kind of fluid grace that made me think of predators, of things that knew exactly how to close distance without making a sound. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made me think of winter nights and wood smoke. You're afraid of me, he observed. No, I lied. Yes. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. But not as afraid as you should be. Why is that? Because I'd spent my whole life being afraid. Because fear was so familiar it felt like home. Because standing in his office, being seen by him, somehow felt less terrifying than the invisibility I'd wrapped around myself like armor. I couldn't say any of that. I'm just here to deliver papers, I whispered. No. His voice was still soft, still quiet, but it cut through me like a blade. You're here because I wanted to see you. You're here because I've been watching you for weeks, and I needed to know if you were real. My heart stopped. Actually stopped. Watching me? Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, you buy coffee at the cafe 3 blocks from your apartment. You order it black because you can't afford the upcharge for milk. You sit at the table by the window and read for exactly 45 minutes before you leave for work. Last Thursday, you were reading Persuasion. You cried on page 216. The room spun. You take the subway, always the 4th car from the front, and you stand near the door even when there are seats available because you don't want to take up space you think belongs to someone else. You work until 6, sometimes 7 if Sanderson has extra filing. You walk home through the park even though it's not the shortest route, and you stop to watch the street musicians even though you never have cash to give them. I couldn't breathe. 3 weeks ago, a man followed you for 6 blocks. You didn't notice, but I did. He doesn't follow anyone anymore. Why? The word came out broken, barely there. Why would you do this? He moved closer. Another foot. Now I could feel the heat coming off him, could see the perfect line of his jaw, the way his throat moved when he swallowed. Because from the moment I saw you, I knew 2 things with absolute certainty. His hand lifted, slowly, giving me time to move away, to run, to choose escape over whatever this was, and his fingers brushed my cheek. Featherlight. Devastating. First, he murmured, that you were trying very hard to disappear. And second, his thumb traced my cheekbone, and I couldn't remember how to breathe. That I would never let you. I should have run. Any sane person would have run, but I stood there in his office, his hand against my face, and felt something inside me crack open, something I'd kept sealed and buried for so long I'd forgotten it existed. Someone sees me. Someone is looking, really looking, and I'm not invisible anymore. I should go, I whispered. Yes, he agreed. But he didn't step back. You should. Mr. Knox. Damien. His thumb moved to my jaw. Say my name, Isabel. This isn't... We can't... Can't what? His voice dropped lower, intimate and dangerous. Can't acknowledge what's already happening? Can't pretend I haven't spent every day for 3 weeks learning everything about you? Can't admit that you've been waiting for someone to see you? You don't know anything about me, I said, but it sounded weak even to my own ears. I know you're alone. I know you're trying to outrun something, or someone. I know you work a job you're overqualified for because you're hiding. His hand fell away, and I felt the loss of his touch like cold water. I know that no one in your life notices when you're hurting, but I do. I notice everything. Tears burned behind my eyes. I couldn't let them fall. Couldn't give him that. What do you want from me? He smiled then, just a slight curve of his mouth that didn't reach his eyes, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Everything, he said simply. But I'm a patient man, Isabel. I can wait. Wait for what? For you to understand that you're safer with me than you've ever been anywhere else. For you to realize that the life you're living, small and scared and invisible, isn't protecting you. It's suffocating you. He returned to his desk, sat down, and suddenly looked like nothing more than a businessman finishing a meeting. You can go now. I didn't move. Unless, he added softly, you'd like to stay. Go. Walk away. This man is dangerous. This man is confessing to stalking you, to invading your privacy, to taking away your choice to be invisible. This man sees you. My voice failed. You're afraid of wanting to stay, he observed. Good. You should be. Because if you stay, Isabel, if you choose to sit down in that chair and talk to me, we both know you won't be able to pretend anymore that this is just a delivery, that I'm just a client, that you don't feel this too. Feel what? The inevitability. He leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, completely in control. The sense that this conversation, this moment, was always going to happen, that we were always going to end up here. My legs felt weak. The chair he'd mentioned, soft leather, positioned across from his desk, looked like a trap. It probably was. I sat down anyway. His smile widened just a fraction. Tell me about your mother. I told him things I'd never told anyone. That's the first rule of men like Damian Knox. They don't need to interrogate you. They don't need to push or pry. They just create space, silence, and somehow you find yourself filling it with every secret you've ever kept. I told him about my mother's addiction, about being 12 years old and learning to forge her signature on school permission slips, about being 14 and realizing that if I didn't figure out how to pay the rent, we'd be on the street, about being 17 when she died. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but slowly, in a hospital bed that smelled like antiseptic and regret, holding my hand and telling me I had to promise to be invisible. Don't let them see you, Bella, she'd whispered, and those were the last words she ever said to me. Don't let them know who you are. It's the only way to stay safe. I'd kept that promise for 7 years, and now I was sitting in a Mafia boss's office, breaking it into pieces. Damian listened without interrupting, didn't offer platitudes or sympathy or any of the hollow things people usually said when you told them your life had been hard. He just listened, his dark eyes never leaving my face, his expression unreadable. When I finally stopped talking, the office had grown dark. City lights glittered through the windows, and I realized hours had passed. Hours. Your mother was wrong, Damian said quietly. Excuse me? She told you invisibility would keep you safe, but she was wrong. He stood, walked to the windows, stood with his back to me. Invisibility doesn't protect you, Isabel. It just makes you easier prey for people who notice what others overlook. And what are you? I asked. If not someone who noticed what others overlooked? He turned, and in the dim light, his face was all shadows and sharp angles. I'm the person who noticed you and decided no one else ever would again. My breath caught. That man who followed you, he continued, voice still soft, still measured. He saw you because you looked vulnerable, alone, easy. He saw prey. Damian moved closer, each step deliberate. I saw someone worth protecting, worth keeping, worth ensuring that no one, not him, not anyone, ever made you feel unsafe again. You don't protect people, Mr. Knox. You control them. Yes. No denial. No justification. Just simple truth. And you'll be safer controlled by me than free in a world that's already shown you what it does to women who have no one watching their back. That's not protection. That's possession. In my world, he said, stopping in front of my chair, they're the same thing. I should have been terrified, should have stood up, walked out, run until my lungs burned and I couldn't hear his voice anymore. Instead, I looked up at him and asked, "What do you want me to do?" His eyes darkened with something that looked almost like triumph, almost like relief. Come to dinner with me tomorrow night. That's it? That's it. For now. And if I say no? He crouched down, bringing himself to my eye level, and suddenly we were close enough that I could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, could see the precise line where he'd shaved that morning, could feel the heat of him. You won't say no, he murmured. Because you're curious. Because you've been alone for so long that the idea of someone seeing you, really seeing you, feels like water in a desert. Because you're smart enough to know that I'm offering you something you'll never find anywhere else. And what's that? A place to stop running. His hand lifted, cupped my face again, and this time I didn't pull away. A place to stop being invisible. A place where someone knows your name and everything it means. Tears spilled over, hot against my cheeks, and he caught them with his thumb. Say yes, Isabel. This is crazy, I whispered. Yes. You're dangerous. Yes. I should be running from you. Yes. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching mine. But you won't. Because you've already decided. You decided the moment you sat down in that chair. You decided when you told me about your mother. You decided the first time you looked into my eyes and recognized something there. Someone who understands what it's like to be alone in a crowded room. How do you know? My voice broke. How do you know what I'm feeling? Because I've been watching you for weeks, and I know you better than you know yourself. I know that you're exhausted from being invisible. I know that you're terrified of wanting something, wanting someone, because everyone you've ever wanted has left you. I know that right now, part of you is screaming to run, and another part, a bigger part, wants to know what happens if you stay. He was right. God help me. He was right about all of it. Dinner, I breathed. Just dinner. Just dinner. He agreed, but we both knew it was a lie. He sent a car for me the next evening, not a taxi, not an Uber. A car, sleek and black, with a driver who opened my door and called me Miss Moretti like I was someone important, someone worth this kind of attention. I'd spent 2 hours getting ready, tearing through my closet for something that didn't scream broke file clerk, finally settling on a simple black dress I'd bought for a funeral 3 years ago. It was too simple, too plain, but it was the best I had. It would have to be enough. The restaurant was the kind of place I'd walked past 1,000 times without ever imagining I'd walk through the door. Soft lighting, quiet conversations, waiters who moved like dancers. The host took one look at me and smiled. Miss Moretti, Mr. Knox is waiting for you. Of course he was. They led me through the dining room, past tables of people who looked like they belonged there, who wore wealth like a second skin, to a private room in the back. The door opened, and there he was. Damien stood as I entered, and the simple courtesy of it made something in my chest ache. He wore a dark suit, perfectly tailored, and looked like he'd stepped out of some old movie where men were dangerous and women were doomed. Isabel. My name in his voice sounded like a prayer, like a promise. Damien. I'd practiced saying it all day, but it still felt strange on my tongue. Intimate. Dangerous. He pulled out my chair, waited for me to sit, then settled across from me. The table was small, close enough that I could see the precise Windsor knot of his tie, the gold cufflinks at his wrists, the way his hands rested on the white tablecloth like they were always in control. You look beautiful, he said. You don't have to. I don't say things I don't mean. His eyes held mine. You look beautiful, Isabel. You've always been beautiful. I'm simply the first person to tell you so. My throat tightened. A waiter appeared, poured wine I definitely couldn't afford, disappeared like smoke. Damian waited until we were alone again before he spoke. Tell me about the book you're reading now. Not, how was your day? Not how's work? He wanted to know what I was reading because he knew I read, because he'd been watching me do it for weeks. Villette, I said. Charlotte Bronte. Ah, the lonely teacher who falls in love with the unattainable professor. A slight smile. I see the appeal. It's not about that. It's about... I stopped, realizing I was about to explain Bronte to a man who'd probably never read her, who probably thought literature was something other people did. "It's about what?" he prompted gently. "It's about a woman who thinks she's invisible, learning that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is let yourself be seen." The words came out before I could stop them, and his smile widened. Appropriate choice. He lifted his wine glass, and I noticed his hands. Long fingers, neat nails, a thin scar across his right knuckles. Hands that had probably done terrible things. Hands that had touched my face yesterday with unbearable gentleness. "Why did you ask me to dinner?" I asked. "Really?" "Because I wanted to sit across from you and watch the candlelight in your eyes. Because I wanted to hear your voice when you're not afraid. Because I wanted to prove to you that I'm not just some figure in the shadows. I'm a man who would like to know you better." "You already know everything about me. I know facts, details, but I don't know what makes you laugh. I don't know what you dream about. I don't know what you'd order if price wasn't a factor and you didn't have to wonder if you'd have enough left over for rent." The observation landed like a blow. Of course he knew I calculated every purchase, every expense. He'd probably watched me count change at the coffee shop. "Order anything you want, Isabel," he said softly. "Money is not a concern tonight." "It's always a concern." "Not anymore. Not with me." And there it was, the promise and the threat wrapped together. Not with me. As if I'd already agreed to something, already crossed a line I could never uncross. The waiter returned. I ordered the cheapest entree out of habit. Damien ordered in Italian, didn't look at prices, and when the waiter left, he was watching me with something that looked like amusement. "You ordered the chicken because it was $28 instead of $45. It wasn't a question. "I'm not comfortable with people spending money on me," I admitted. "You're not comfortable with people caring for you," he corrected. "There's a difference. You've taught yourself that accepting help, accepting generosity, means owing someone something. And you've learned not to owe anyone anything, because people always collect their debts." "Don't they?" "Yes," he said simply. "But some debts are worth incurring. Some debts are actually gifts disguised as obligations." "And which are you offering?" He leaned back in his chair, considering me with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Both. Neither. I'm offering you the chance to stop calculating the cost of every moment of joy. To stop wondering if eating a decent meal means you won't make rent. To stop being afraid that accepting comfort means surrendering control. By surrendering control to you instead? By trusting that I'll use that control to give you things you've never allowed yourself to have." The food arrived before I could respond. It was beautiful. The kind of meal you saw in magazines, arranged like art. I picked up my fork, and my hand was shaking. "Isabel." I looked up. "Breathe," he said gently. "This is just dinner. Just conversation. You can leave anytime you want." "Can I?" A pause. Then, "No. But I'd like you to believe you can. I'd like you to stay because you want to, not because you're afraid to go." I took a bite of chicken. It was perfect. Tender and flavorful, and probably cost more than I made in a day. It tasted like everything I'd told myself I didn't need, didn't deserve, couldn't have. It tasted like giving up. Or giving in. I wasn't sure which. We talked for 3 hours. He asked me about books, and I found myself telling him about the library I'd haunted as a teenager, the librarian who'd let me hide there on the nights my mother was too drunk to notice I was gone. He asked about college, and I explained how I'd gotten a full scholarship to NYU, but had to drop out sophomore year when my mother got sick. "You studied literature?" he asked. "Comparative literature. I wanted to be a professor." I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to me. I wanted to spend my life teaching people to love books the way I did. "Why did you stop wanting that?" "Because wanting things is dangerous." Because every time I let myself want something, life took it away. So I stopped wanting. Started surviving instead. And how's that working for you? I met his eyes. You tell me. You're the one who's been watching. I think, he said slowly, that you've been surviving so well you've forgotten how to live. I think you're so used to being afraid that you've mistaken fear for safety. I think you're dying by inches, Isabel, and you've convinced yourself it's self-preservation. The words hit like fists. What makes you think you know better? I demanded. What makes you think you have any right to judge how I've chosen to live my life? Because I recognize myself in you. His voice stayed level, calm. I know what it's like to build walls so high you forget there's a world outside them. I know what it's like to convince yourself that solitude is strength, that needing no one makes you invulnerable. I know what it's like to wake up one day and realize you've become so good at surviving that you've forgotten what you're surviving for. Silence stretched between us. How did you... I swallowed hard. How did you stop? Surviving instead of living? I haven't, he admitted. Not entirely, but I've learned that some things are worth the risk. Some people are worth tearing down the walls for. Is that what you think I am? Worth the risk? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached across the table, slowly, giving me time to pull away, and took my hand. His fingers were warm, his touch gentle, and I felt that touch everywhere. I think, he said quietly, that the moment I saw you, I knew I had two choices. I could walk away, let you continue your small, safe, invisible life. Or I could take a risk I've spent 20 years avoiding. I could let myself care about someone who has the power to hurt me. I don't have any power, I whispered. Especially not over you. You have all of it. His thumb traced circles on my palm. You have the power to walk away right now, and I would let you. You have the power to tell me you want nothing to do with me, and I would honor that. You have the power to break something in me I didn't even know could still break. I don't believe you. I know, but you will. He released my hand, and I felt the loss like cold. Let me take you home. I can take the subway. Isabel. My name again, soft and absolute. Let me take you home. Let me make sure you're safe. Let me do this one small thing without you arguing about independence or obligation or cost. I wanted to fight. Wanted to insist I could take care of myself. But I was so tired of taking care of myself. Okay, I whispered. The car ride was silent. I sat in the back seat, Damian beside me but not touching, and watched the city slide past the tinted windows. My neighborhood looked different from inside this car. Smaller, dirtier, more dangerous. I'd never noticed before how many people loitered on corners, how many dark alleys cut between buildings, how many places someone could hide. The car stopped outside my building and I reached for the door handle. Wait, Damian said. The driver appeared, opened my door, offered his hand to help me out. I took it because refusing felt more complicated than accepting, and then Damian was there, his hand on the small of my back, guiding me toward the entrance. You don't have to walk me up, I said. I know. He did anyway. My building was 5 floors, no elevator, and I'd lived on the top floor for 3 years because the rent was cheapest there. Damian followed me up the stairs without comment, without seeming even slightly winded, and I was acutely aware of what he must be seeing. Peeling paint, flickering lights, the smell of cooking and mildew, and too many people living too close together. My apartment was at the end of the hall. I stopped outside the door, key in hand, and turned to face him. Thank you, I said formally. For dinner. It was... Isabel. Very nice. And I appreciate... Isabel. I stopped. He stepped closer, and suddenly the narrow hallway felt even smaller. His hand lifted to my face again, that gesture I was already beginning to recognize, already beginning to crave, and he looked at me like he was memorizing every detail. "I'm going to kiss you goodnight," he said softly, "unless you tell me not to." My heart hammered. "You're asking permission?" "Always. In this? Always." His thumb brushed my lower lip. "Say yes, Isabel. Or say no. But say something, because I need to hear your voice tell me what you want." What I want. When was the last time someone had asked me that? When was the last time I'd even let myself consider the question? "Yes," I breathed. He leaned in slowly, so slowly I could have changed my mind, could have pulled away, could have chosen safety over this moment. But I didn't move, didn't breathe. Just waited as he closed the distance between us until his lips touched mine. Soft, gentle. Nothing like I'd expected from a man like him. His hand cradled my face like I was something precious, something breakable, and he kissed me like he had all the time in the world. Like this wasn't the beginning of something but the continuation of something that had already started weeks ago when he first saw me in that coffee shop. When he pulled back, I was shaking. "Go inside," he murmured. "Lock the door, get some sleep." I couldn't speak. "Tomorrow night, dinner again. My driver will pick you up at 7. Damien, Say yes. This is moving too fast. I can't think when you're... Say yes, Isabel. Or say no. But say it now, while you're still clear-headed enough to mean it. I should say no. Should tell him I needed space, time, distance to figure out what I was feeling, what I was risking. "Yes," I whispered instead. His smile was small, but genuine. "Good girl." He waited until I unlocked my door, until I was safely inside, until I'd turned the deadbolt. And then I heard his footsteps retreating down the hall, heard the stairs creak under his weight, heard the building door close behind him. Only then did I let myself slide down to the floor, press my hands to my face, and try to remember how to breathe. He sent flowers the next morning. Not roses, not the expensive, cliché, obvious choice. Instead, white peonies and blue delphiniums, the exact flowers my mother used to love. The flowers she'd grown in the tiny window box of our old apartment before the addiction took everything beautiful and made it ugly. There was no card. There didn't need to be. He was showing me he knew. Showing me he'd looked deep enough to find even the details I'd never spoken aloud. Showing me that invisibility was no longer an option. I called in sick to work. I couldn't face Mr. Sanderson's knowing looks. Couldn't pretend I was still the same invisible file clerk who'd walked into that office 2 days ago. Something had shifted. Something had broken open. I spent the day reading Villette and thinking about Damien's hands and trying to convince myself I could still walk away. By the time 7 o'clock arrived, I'd changed clothes 4 times. The car was waiting exactly on time. Dinner became a pattern. Every night for 2 weeks, Damien sent his car. Every night we sat across from each other in that same private room and talked about everything and nothing. Books, music, politics, philosophy. He had opinions, strong ones, but he never dismissed mine, even when we disagreed. Especially when we disagreed. "You're wrong," he'd say with that slight smile, "but I like the way you think." He asked about my day, and I found myself telling him. The boring minutiae of filing, the office politics, the customer who'd yelled at Mr. Sanderson about legal fees, things I'd never bothered telling anyone because no one had ever bothered to ask. He told me about his work too, carefully, editing the dangerous parts, but giving me glimpses of a world I'd never imagined. Business deals and real estate developments and consultations that sounded legitimate until you paid attention to the pauses, the careful word choices, the things he didn't say. "You're afraid of me," he observed one night. Our second week together. Yes, I admitted. No point lying. But less afraid than you were. Maybe I'm just getting used to being afraid. Or maybe you're realizing that I'm not going to hurt you. He set down his wine glass. I've had 2 weeks to show you who I am, Isabel. 2 weeks of conversation, of time together. Have I done anything to make you feel unsafe? I considered. No. But that doesn't mean you won't. You're right. It doesn't. I could hurt you very easily. I could ruin your life with a phone call. I could make you disappear so thoroughly that no one would ever find you. He said it calmly, matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. But I won't. Do you know why? Because you're a good person? I said it sarcastically. No. Because you're mine, and I protect what's mine. There it was again. That claim. That absolute certainty. I'm not yours, I said, but it sounded weak. Aren't you? He leaned forward, elbows on the table. You've had dinner with me every night for 14 days. You wait for my car. You wear the dresses I send you. You said they were gifts. No obligations. They are gifts. But you wear them anyway, which means you want to please me. You want me to look at you and see something beautiful. That's not. You check your phone at 6:55 every evening, even though you know my driver is never late. You're waiting for the confirmation text. Waiting to make sure I haven't changed my mind. Haven't decided you're not worth this effort after all. He was right. God, he was right. You've started sleeping better. He continued quietly. There are no more shadows under your eyes. You've gained a few pounds. Not many, but enough that your dresses fit better. You smile more. You're reading faster because you're not using books to escape anymore. You're reading because you enjoy it. How do you know all of this? Because I pay attention. Because every change in you matters to me. Because you're the most interesting thing in my life, Isabel, and I notice everything. I pushed back from the table, stood up. My hands were shaking. This is too much. You're too much. I can't. I need space to think. Take all the space you need. He didn't move, didn't try to stop me. But you should know something before you go. What? I've been patient. I've given you 2 weeks to get comfortable, to see that I mean what I say. But my patience has limits. His eyes were dark, intense. Tomorrow night, I'm going to ask you a question. And the answer you give me will determine everything that happens next. What question? Come to dinner tomorrow and find out. I left without responding. Spent the whole night not sleeping. The next evening, I almost didn't go. I stood in my apartment, staring at the black dress laid out on my bed. Another gift, silk this time, probably worth more than 3 months of my rent, and tried to remember who I'd been before Damian Knox looked at me and decided I was worth keeping. I couldn't. That woman, the invisible file clerk, the girl who kept her head down and her wants small, had disappeared. Damian had seen her out of existence, replaced her with someone who wore silk dresses and expected a car at 7, and had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be seen. That's the danger, I thought. Not that he'll hurt me, that he's already changed me, and I didn't even notice it happening. The car arrived at 7. I got in. The restaurant was different this time, not the private room but somewhere else entirely. The driver took me to a building I recognized, the Knox building, and led me not to the office but to the elevator. Top floor, the penthouse. My stomach dropped as the elevator rose. The doors opened directly into an apartment that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing all of Manhattan, furniture that managed to be both modern and comfortable, and in the center of it all, a dining table set for 2. Damian stood by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. Isabel. He turned, and the look on his face made my breath catch. Come in. I stepped out of the elevator. It closed behind me with a soft click, and suddenly I was very aware that we were alone, completely alone. No waiters, no other diners, no witnesses. Are you afraid? He asked. Yes, I admitted. Of me? Or of yourself? The question caught me off guard. What? Are you afraid I'll hurt you? Or are you afraid that you want this? That you want me? He moved closer, and I held my ground. Are you afraid of what I might do? Or are you afraid of how badly you want me to do it? Both, I whispered. Good. That means you're paying attention. He gestured to the table. Sit. We need to talk. I sat. He poured wine with steady hands. No sommelier this time, just him, and settled across from me. I promised you a question, he said. Yes. But first, I'm going to tell you some things, and you're going to listen without interrupting, because this is important, and I need you to understand exactly what I'm offering before you answer. My heart was racing. I'm not a good man, Isabel. I've done things that would horrify you. I've hurt people, ruined lives, made decisions that haunt me even though I'd make them again. The world I live in doesn't have room for weakness or sentiment or mercy. It has rules, and one of the most important rules is this. Never care about anything so much that losing it would destroy you. He paused, took a sip of wine. I've followed that rule for 20 years. Never let anyone close. Never trust anyone completely. Never, ever let myself need someone. His eyes met mine. And then I saw you in a coffee shop, wearing a coat 3 sizes too big, trying so hard to be invisible that you practically disappeared, and I broke my own rule. Damien, I told you not to interrupt. But his voice was gentle. I broke my rule, and I started watching you, learning you. I told myself it was curiosity, that I'd get bored, that you'd stop being interesting once I'd figured you out. But you didn't. Every day I learned something new. Every day you became more essential. He set down his glass. 3 days ago, someone tried to kill me. A business rival, doesn't matter who. They shot at my car, missed by inches. And my first thought, my very first thought, wasn't about revenge or survival or any of the logical things I should have been thinking about. My first thought was, if I die, who will make sure Isabel is safe? My hands were shaking. That's when I knew I'd gone too far. That's when I knew I'd broken more than a rule. I'd broken something fundamental about who I am and how I survive in this world. Because I care about you, Isabel. I care so much that it's dangerous. And the question I need to ask you is this. He stood, walked around the table, and knelt in front of my chair, took my hands in his. Will you let me keep you safe? Will you stop fighting this? Stop pretending you don't feel it too, and let yourself be mine? Really mine. Not just for dinners and conversations, but for everything? Will you trust me enough to give me control over your safety, your well-being, your life? That's not a question, I said shakily. That's a dozen questions. Then here's the simple version. Will you be mine, Isabel? Completely, permanently, irrevocably mine. The room was spinning. You're asking me to, what? Move in with you? Become your what? Your girlfriend? My everything. His hands tightened on mine. I'm asking you to let me take care of you. To quit that job that makes you miserable and wastes your talents. To live here, with me, where you'll be safe and protected and seen. To accept that I'll give you anything you want. Books, time, freedom to become whoever you're supposed to be, in exchange for one thing. What? You. All of you. No more hiding, no more being invisible. You give yourself to me, and I promise I'll guard that gift with my life. This is insane, I breathed. We've known each other 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Damian. People don't make life-changing decisions based on 2 weeks. People who are dying of thirst don't question the water they're offered. His thumb traced circles on my palm. You've been drowning, Isabel. Working a job you hate. Living in a place that isn't safe. Existing instead of living. I'm offering you a life. A real life. And yes, it comes with strings. I'm not pretending otherwise. I'll be possessive. I'll want to know where you are, who you're with. I'll want you here, with me, safe where I can see you. That's not love. That's obsession. Yes. No denial. It is. But it's also the only way I know how to care about someone. All or nothing, Isabel. I can't do halfway. I can't watch you from a distance and be satisfied with occasional dinners and stolen kisses. Either I have all of you, or I have to let you go completely. And if I say no? Pain flickered across his face. Then I'll make sure you're protected anyway. I'll arrange for you to have a better job, a safer apartment. I'll watch you from a distance and make sure no one hurts you. But I won't contact you again. I won't put you in the position of having to refuse me twice. Tears spilled down my cheeks. This isn't fair, I whispered. You can't make yourself essential to me in 2 weeks, and then demand I choose between having everything and having nothing. I know. I'm sorry. And he did sound sorry, devastated even. But I can't do this any other way. I can't pretend to be a normal man offering a normal relationship. I'm giving you all of me, the darkness and the danger and the obsession, and I need to know if you can accept that. I looked at him, really looked, at the man kneeling in front of me, powerful and dangerous and completely sincere, at the hands holding mine like I was something precious, at the eyes that had seen me when no one else had, that had noticed when I was hurting, that had watched me for weeks, with a kind of attention I'd never experienced before. We shouldn't do this, I said, and my voice cracked on the last word. His expression went very still. Is that your answer? I'm not finished. I took a shaky breath. We shouldn't do this. It's too fast, too intense, too dangerous. You're asking me to give up my independence, my autonomy, my carefully constructed walls. You're asking me to trust you with everything when I barely know you. By every reasonable measure, I should say no. But I haven't felt invisible in 2 weeks. I haven't felt afraid walking home. I haven't felt alone. More tears. You see me, Damian. Really see me. And I've spent so long being invisible that the idea of going back to that, of going back to a life where no one notices, no one cares, no one pays attention, feels worse than any risk you represent. Isabel. So yes. I gripped his hands harder. Yes. I'll be yours. Yes. I'll let you keep me safe. Yes. I'll stop fighting this thing between us. But you have to understand, I'm terrified. I'm terrified that you'll get bored, that you'll realize I'm not worth this effort, that one day you'll look at me and see just another obligation instead of whatever it is you see now. He rose to his feet, pulling me up with him, and then his hands were on my face and he was kissing me. Not gently this time, desperately, like I was air and he'd been drowning. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. I see you, he murmured against my lips. I see someone brilliant and brave and so used to pain that pleasure scares her. I see someone who's been invisible so long she's forgotten how to be seen. I see someone worth keeping, worth protecting, worth obsessing over. Another kiss, softer. I see my future, Isabel, and I will never, ever get bored. I moved in 3 days later, not because I wanted to rush, because Damian called me at 2 in the morning and said, "Pack a bag. My driver is outside." What? Why? Because someone broke into your building tonight. They didn't make it to your floor. My security stopped them. But they were coming for you. My blood went cold. Coming for me? Why would anyone? Because people know you matter to me. Because in my world, caring about someone makes them a target. Because I should have moved you the night you said yes, and I'm rectifying that mistake now. I packed in 10 minutes, left my apartment without looking back. The penthouse was dark when I arrived, except for a single lamp in the living room. Damien was waiting, still dressed despite the hour, and the moment I stepped out of the elevator, he pulled me into his arms. "You're safe," he murmured into my hair. "You're here. You're safe." "Who was it?" I asked against his chest. "Who broke in?" "No one you need to worry about. They won't be a problem again." The certainty in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it made me feel protected, cherished, like I mattered enough to defend. "Come on," he said, taking my bag. "Let me show you your room." "My room? Did you think I was going to demand you share my bed immediately?" A slight smile. "I told you, Isabel, I want all of you. That includes your trust, your comfort, your willingness. I'm not going to rush you into anything you're not ready for." He led me down a hallway to a bedroom that was bigger than my entire old apartment. King-size bed, walk-in closet, windows overlooking the city. "This is yours," he said. "Your space. I won't come in without permission." "Thank you," I whispered. He set my bag on a chair, then turned to face me. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we'll deal with the practicalities. Moving your things, quitting your job, setting you up with a new phone and security protocols. But tonight, just rest. You're safe here. I promise." He started to leave. "Damien?" He turned. "Will you stay? Just until I fall asleep?" His expression softened. "Of course." He sat in the chair by the window, and I climbed into the unfamiliar bed. The sheets were soft, expensive, and smelled like lavender. I pulled the blankets up and looked at him, at this dangerous man who'd upended my life, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "That you look right here. Like you belong." A pause. "Like you were always meant to end up in my home, in my life. Like this was inevitable from the moment I first saw you." "Do you believe in fate?" "I believe in inevitability. I believe that some things are written so deeply that fighting them is pointless." He leaned back in the chair. "Sleep, Isabel. I'll be here." I closed my eyes. For the first time in 7 years, I felt safe enough to sleep without fear. The first week was an adjustment. Damien insisted I quit my job immediately. He called Sanderson himself. I listened on the extension, heard the cold authority in his voice as he explained that I would not be returning, that my final paycheck should be mailed to his office, that there would be no questions or complications. Sanderson agreed to everything. "You scared him," I said when Damien hung up. "Good. He should be scared. He had you working in an unsafe neighborhood for minimum wage when you have a degree from NYU. He was taking advantage of your situation, and I don't tolerate people who exploit the vulnerable." "I wasn't—" "You were vulnerable, Isabel. Desperate and alone and willing to accept scraps because you thought that's all you deserved. But you're not alone anymore, and you're certainly not desperate. You have me. You have security. You have time to figure out what you actually want to do with your life." It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. He gave me complete freedom during the day, encouraged me to explore the city, to visit museums, to spend hours in bookstores. He set up accounts for me, money I could access whenever I wanted, for whatever I wanted, and when I protested, he simply said, "What's mine is yours. Get used to it." I bought books. So many books. More than I could read in a year. In 5 years. I bought them and stacked them in my room, and felt guilty and exhilarated and like I was doing something forbidden. "That's not nearly enough," Damien said when he saw the growing collection. We need to build you a proper library. I don't need. I didn't ask what you needed. I'm telling you what I'm going to give you. He pulled me into his arms, kissed my forehead. Stop fighting me on this, sweetheart. Let me spoil you. Let me give you the things you've denied yourself for years. Sweetheart. He'd started calling me that, and every time I heard it, something in my chest went warm. But we hadn't slept together. Hadn't done more than kiss. He was waiting for something. I just didn't know what. 2 weeks after I moved in, Damien had to travel for business. 3 days. He told me over breakfast. Miami. Some meetings I can't avoid. Okay, I said, trying not to show how much the idea of 3 days without him bothered me. He saw it anyway. Of course he did. You could come with me, he offered. I thought you said it was business. It is. But the meetings are only during the day. The evenings would be ours. He reached across the table, took my hand. I don't like the idea of leaving you. Even for 3 days. I'll be fine. You have security here. I'm safe. Safe. Yes. But alone. His thumb traced circles on my palm. I don't want you to be alone, Isabel. I've been alone most of my life. I know how to handle it. That's exactly why I don't want you to have to handle it anymore. He pulled me out of my chair, into his lap. Come with me. We'll walk on the beach. Have dinner at this restaurant I know. I'll show you a different side of my world. I wanted to say yes. Wanted it so badly. What if I'm in the way? What if your business associates don't want some random woman hanging around? You're not some random woman. You're mine. And anyone who has a problem with that can find someone else to do business with. He tilted my face up, made me look at him. Come with me, sweetheart. Let me show you Miami. Let me prove that my world has room for you in it. Okay, I whispered. His smile was brilliant, devastating. Good girl. Miami was beautiful and strange and overwhelming. We stayed in a hotel that felt more like a palace. Marble, everything. Ocean views from every window. Staff who appeared the moment you needed anything and disappeared the moment you didn't. Damien had meetings during the day, leaving me with a security guard who stayed discreetly out of sight while I explored South Beach, wandered through the Art Deco district, spent hours in a bookstore that specialized in rare first editions. But the evenings belonged to us. Dinner at restaurants where Damien knew the owners, where they brought out dishes not on the menu and wine from private reserves. Walks along the beach with my shoes in one hand and Damien's hand in the other. Conversations about everything. My childhood, his rise through the organization he ran, the things we wanted, the things we feared. Tell me about your family, I asked one night as we sat on the balcony of our suite. My family is dead. The flatness of his tone made me flinch. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. You asked a reasonable question. He was quiet for a moment. My father ran the organization before me. He was a hard man, but fair. He taught me everything. How to read people, how to make decisions, how to survive in a world that doesn't forgive weakness. My mother balanced him. She was soft where he was hard, kind where he was cruel. She loved books, actually. Used to read to me every night before bed. What happened to them? A rival family decided to send a message. Car bomb. I was 19. He said it without emotion, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands gripped the balcony railing. I took over the organization the next day, hunted down everyone involved, made sure they understood what happens when you take something from me. I'm sorry, I said again. Don't be. It was a long time ago. He turned to face me. But it's why I am the way I am with you. Why I'm possessive. Why I need to know you're safe. Why the idea of losing you makes me capable of things that would horrify you. I've already lost everyone I cared about once. I won't survive losing you too. The honesty of it took my breath away. You won't lose me, I promised. You can't know that. Neither can you. But we're here anyway, aren't we? Taking the risk, hoping it's worth it. He pulled me into his arms and we stood there on the balcony with the ocean breeze in our hair and the city lights below us, and I felt the last of my walls crumble. I'm falling in love with you, I whispered against his chest. His arms tightened. I know. I've been waiting for you to realize it. Do you love you? He pulled back to look at me. I've loved you since the first time I saw you cry over a book. I've loved you since you ordered the cheapest thing on the menu because you were trying not to take advantage of me. I've loved you since you said yes even though you were terrified. I've loved you through every moment, Isabel. I was just waiting for you to catch up. I kissed him. And this time, when he kissed back, it felt different. Deeper. Like a promise being made, a contract being signed. Take me to bed, I said when we broke apart. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He lifted me into his arms. Actually lifted me, like I weighed nothing, and carried me inside. Set me on the bed with a gentleness that made my throat tight. We don't have to. I want to, I interrupted. I want you. All of you. I'm done being afraid. What happened next was private, intimate, the kind of thing that doesn't need to be narrated, doesn't need to be detailed because it was ours and ours alone. But I'll tell you this. Damien touched me like I was something sacred. Like every kiss, every caress, every whispered word was a prayer. He learned my body with the same attention he'd given to learning everything else about me. Patient, thorough, devastating. And when I finally fell asleep in his arms, I felt complete, for the first time in my life. We returned to New York different people. Or maybe we were the same people, just finally willing to admit what we'd become to each other. Damien cleared out one of the spare rooms and had it converted into a library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, a reading chair positioned by the window, a ladder on wheels to reach the high shelves. He filled it with first editions. Bronte, Austen, Woolf, every author I'd ever mentioned loving, and when he showed it to me, I cried. This is too much, I said. It's not nearly enough. He pulled me close. I want to give you the world, Isabel. Let me start with books. I spent my days reading, writing in a journal Damien had given me, slowly rediscovering the woman I'd buried years ago. The woman who loved literature, who had opinions about things, who believed she deserved space to exist. And I spent my nights with Damien. We fell into a rhythm. He'd come home from work, sometimes late, sometimes smelling like cigars and danger, and I'd be waiting. We'd have dinner together, talk about our days, and then we'd retreat to his room. Our room now. He never told me details about his work, never brought the darkness home with him. But sometimes I'd see it in his eyes. The weight of decisions. The cost of the power he wielded. The toll of being someone people feared. Tell me what you're thinking, I'd say on those nights. I'm thinking that you make this bearable, that coming home to you makes everything else worth it. He'd pull me close, bury his face in my hair. I'm thinking that I was dying before I found you, and I didn't even know it. 6 months passed. 6 months of safety, of being seen, of slowly learning to trust that this was real and permanent and mine to keep. Damien gave me everything I needed and most of what I wanted. Freedom to explore the city, to reconnect with old friends from college, to start auditing literature classes at Columbia. Money to buy books, clothes, whatever caught my eye. Time to heal from years of survival mode. But he also took things. My independence, my privacy, my ability to go anywhere without security trailing discreetly behind. My freedom to keep secrets, because he noticed everything and asked about anything that seemed off. "Where were you this afternoon?" he'd ask. "The library." "Which one?" "The main branch." "You were there for 4 hours. What were you researching?" At first, the questions felt invasive. Then I realized they came from care, not control. He wanted to know because he wanted to know me, wanted to be part of my day even when we were apart. So I stopped fighting it, started sharing freely, told him about the books I was reading, the lectures I was attending, the ideas I was having about maybe, possibly, someday, teaching again. "You should do it," he said when I mentioned the teaching idea. "You light up when you talk about literature. You should share that with students." "I don't have the credentials anymore. I'd need to finish my degree, get a master's, probably a PhD. So do it. What's stopping you?" "Time. Money. The fact that I'm nearly 30 and starting over seems—" "Isabel." He cupped my face. "You have all the time in the world. Money isn't a concern. And starting over isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something to be celebrated. You're not the woman you were 6 months ago. Why should you be stuck with the decisions that woman made? You really think I could do it? I know you could. And I'll support you every step of the way." I enrolled at Columbia a month later, but not everything was perfect. There were moments, usually late at night, usually when Damien thought I was asleep, when I'd hear him on the phone in his office. Conversations in Italian, in a tone I rarely heard from him. Cold. Absolute. Terrifying. There were days he came home with blood on his cuffs, and when I asked about it, he'd just kiss my forehead and say, "Nothing you need to worry about." There were nights he didn't come home at all, and I'd wake up alone, terrified, until his text arrived. "Meeting running late. Don't wait up. I love you." I never asked for details. Some part of me didn't want to know. Didn't want to understand exactly what he did, what he was capable of, what price he paid to keep me safe and comfortable and free to pursue my dreams. But I knew. I knew he hurt people. I knew he made decisions that destroyed lives. I knew that the money paying for my tuition, my books, my life, came from places I'd rather not examine too closely, and I accepted it. Because the alternative, going back to being invisible, going back to survival mode, going back to a life where no one cared if I existed, was worse than any moral compromise. That's the truth they don't tell you about relationships like mine and Damien's. That sometimes safety feels more important than purity. That sometimes being seen is worth the cost of seeing. The night everything changed started like any other. Damien was late coming home. I was curled up in the library, reading Persuasion for the 100th time when I heard the elevator doors open. His footsteps were heavy. Wrong. I set down my book, went to find him. He was in the living room, standing by the windows, still in his coat. His shoulders were tight, his hands clenched at his sides. "Damien?" He didn't turn. "Go to bed, Isabel." "What's wrong?" "Nothing you need to be concerned about. Go to bed." I walked closer, saw his reflection in the glass, saw the tension in his jaw, the darkness in his eyes. "Talk to me," I said softly. "I can't." His voice was rough. "Not about this. Not with you." "Why not?" "Because you look at me like I'm worth loving, and if I tell you what I did tonight, you'll stop. And I can't. I can't lose that. I can't lose you." My heart broke. I moved to stand in front of him, made him look at me. "You're not going to lose me. You don't know what I'm capable of. I know enough. I know you've done terrible things. I know you'll do more terrible things. I know the world you live in doesn't have room for mercy or hesitation." I took his face in my hands. "And I love you anyway." "You shouldn't. Probably not. But I do. So whatever happened tonight, Whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it alone. Let me help. You can't help with this. Then let me be here. Let me remind you that you're more than the worst things you've done, that you're the man who built me a library, who makes sure I eat breakfast, who learned what flowers my mother loved just so you could send them to me. That version of you exists too, Damian. Don't forget that. He pulled me into his arms so suddenly, so tightly, that I gasped. I don't deserve you. Maybe not. But you have me anyway. We stood there for a long time, and when he finally pulled back, his eyes were wet. I killed someone tonight, he said quietly. Someone who tried to hurt one of my people. I didn't think about it, didn't hesitate. I just ended him. And the worst part is, I don't feel guilty. I'd do it again. I'd do it 1,000 times if it meant keeping my people safe. Keeping you safe. I know. You should be horrified. I should be a lot of things. But mostly I'm just grateful that you came home, that you're here, that you trusted me enough to tell me. He kissed me then, desperately, like I was the only thing anchoring him to humanity. I love you, he murmured against my lips. God help me, I love you so much. I love you too. All of you. Even the parts you think are unlovable. After that night, things shifted again. Damian stopped hiding things from me. Not the details. I still didn't want those. But the weight. When he had a hard day, he told me. When he was struggling with a decision, he asked my opinion. When he came home carrying the darkness, he let me see it. And I learned that loving someone like Damian meant accepting all of him. The gentle man who read beside me in the library. The dangerous man who protected what was his without hesitation. The broken man who'd lost his family and built walls so high he'd forgotten what it felt like to be vulnerable. I learned that being loved by someone like Damian meant giving up certain freedoms. That my safety would always be his priority, even when I didn't think I needed protecting. That my choices would be filtered through his need to keep me secure. That I would never again be truly independent, because he needed to know where I was, who I was with, that I was safe. Some people would call that controlling, unhealthy, a relationship built on imbalance and possession, and they wouldn't be wrong. But they also wouldn't understand that for someone who'd spent years being invisible, being seen, really, truly seen, felt like a kind of magic. That having someone care about my safety, my happiness, my dreams felt like a gift I'd never expected to receive. That sometimes the cage is also the sanctuary. A year after I moved in, Damian proposed, not with a big production or a public display, just the two of us in the library, him on his knee with a ring that probably cost more than most people's houses, asking me in that quiet voice if I'd make this permanent. You already know my answer, I said. I want to hear you say it. Yes. Always yes. We married in a small ceremony, just us, a judge, and Damian's most trusted associates as witnesses. I wore white. He wore black. We promised to love and cherish and protect. We didn't promise to obey, because I'd already given him that without needing to speak the words aloud. Now, 2 years after that first dinner, I'm sitting in our library writing this. Our story. The truth of how I became Isabel Knox. How I went from invisible to essential. How I learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is let yourself be seen. Damian is in his office, probably making decisions I don't want to know about. In an hour, he'll come find me, ask about my day, tell me he loves me. We'll have dinner together, go to bed together, wake up together, and I'll be grateful. Grateful for the man who saw me when I was trying to disappear. Grateful for the life I have now, full of books and safety and love. Grateful even for the cage, because it's also home. People ask me sometimes, the few people who know our story, if I regret it. If I wish I'd said no that night in his penthouse. If I miss my independence, my freedom, my ability to be invisible. And I tell them the truth. There are moments I miss the simplicity of my old life. Moments I wonder who I would have become if I'd kept walking, kept hiding, kept being invisible. But then Damien comes home, and he looks at me like I'm the most important thing in his world, and I remember, I was dying before I met him. Slowly, quietly, dying by inches in a life that demanded I make myself small. He didn't save me. I'm not some damsel in distress who needed rescuing, but he saw me. And in seeing me, he reminded me that I was worth seeing, that I deserved to take up space, to be loud, to want things, to live, not just survive. And that gift of recognition, of being known and loved anyway, was worth every freedom I traded for it. So no, I don't regret saying yes. I don't regret the night I sat in that chair in his office and told him about my mother. I don't regret the moment I admitted I was falling in love with him. I don't regret marrying a man who lives in darkness, because he's given me more light than I ever found on my own. We shouldn't do this, I said that night in his office, and he told me why it was already too late. He was right. From the moment he first saw me, from the moment he decided I was worth watching, worth knowing, worth keeping, it was already too late. Not because he forced me, not because I had no choice, but because something in me had been waiting for someone to notice, to see past the invisibility I'd wrapped around myself like armor, to recognize that underneath the walls and the fear and the careful anonymity, there was a woman who wanted to be seen. He gave me that, and in return, I gave him everything. Some people would call that a devil's bargain. I call it love. The elevator doors open and I hear his footsteps. Damien's home. I close my laptop, set aside my writing, and go to meet him. Because that's what I do now. I go to him. I let him see me. I let him love me in the only way he knows how. Completely. Possessively. Absolutely. And when he pulls me into his arms, when he kisses me and asks about my day, when he looks at me like I'm the answer to every question he never knew he had, I remember why it was always too late to say no. Because this, right here, is everything I've been looking for my whole life, and I'm never letting it go.